Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 6th meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. I call this meeting to order, and we will now begin with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Thank you, and now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Richard Anderson.
Here.
Cheryl Andrews.
Here.
Ronald Bergstrom.
Here.
Leo Kakunis. Christopher Kanega. James Killian. Marcia King.
Here.
Tom Lynch.
Here.
Teresa Martin.
Here.
Deborah McCutcheon.
Here.
Spiro Mitrakostas.
Here.
John Oman.
Here.
Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise.
Here.
Julia Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, we have a majority present with 82.02% of the delegates present.
Thank you. I now need a motion to approve the calendar of business.
Motion to approve the calendar of business.
Do I have a sec? Moved and seconded. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, you should have received a copy of the Journal of March 16th, 2011. Is there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the journal.
Motion to approve. I got it on.
It was me.
It's on.
Anyway.
Anyway, motion to approve the Journal of March 16th, 2011.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Okay, and now we brings us to the communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners.
Isn't it a beautiful day? You know, I started off my day semi-pleasantly because I had to go to the dentist, but who was there but that your charming new assembly clerk who took me. I couldn't expect to see an attractive, pretty girl at that time of the morning, but she said, "Hey, Bill." And I was looking, is my wife seeing me here? But it was good to see you this morning, Jan. The county commissioners, met today, and we had the opportunity to get some information from the League of Women Voters who were kind enough to give us their interest with regard to this process that we're going through. Former Senator Honor Rauschenbach and former Senator Rob O'Leary were kind enough to come, and they have agreed to take on the role of identifying some likely candidates that might be interested in serving on this review of the special commission. So we're waiting to hear from them as to what they would recommend, and we're also waiting to hear from them with regard to a discussion that we had about a charge which Mark is putting together, and which we will all look forward to seeing what that outcome is. Now, at that time, we will certainly share that, with all of you, and hopefully we will continue to make progress on that. There is one thing that I think is very important that I wanted to tell the people who are watching about. I serve on a family advisory committee over at Cape Cod Hospital, and one of the things that had come up last night was the importance of identifying the difference on what end-of-life discussion should be. There's a new concept called a natural death, and while we have advanced directives and we have proxies, one of the things that we don't consider is the conversation that you should have with your, that people should have with their significant others with regard to this at a time when this conversation can be held. It turns out that this is one of the most stressful times for families and for people, and I'd like to suggest to the audience that that this is a conversation that is very useful to be held, and I hope that they indeed do that. So with that, I want to say, oh, there they are. Okay, I'd given that to Ron.
I know, but he wanted them.
Oh, he didn't, they were too hot to handle.
No,
Yeah.
formally, a formal submission. That's exactly right.
You're such a stickler for order and formality, Sheila. Well, would you be kind enough to deliver that over there too?
Happy to deliver it.
And reaching your hands today from our County Commissioner Sheila Lyons is the copy of that ordinance you've been waiting on tenterhooks to receive with regard to the amendment to the regional policy plan with regard to wind towers.
Great anticipation, we have already scheduled a meeting of the government regs, a public hearing before government regs on the 13th, which would be a week from today, immediately following the last, I don't know, was it 4 o'clock was advertised? It was advertised for 4 o'clock. That may be flexible a little bit depending on the committee hearings, but, so I want that word to get out so that the people who are interested don't suggest that they don't know about it.
4 o'clock, I'll be there.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
In regards to that special commission, is there a budget being drawn up for that? If so, are they going to have a lawyer? And how is he going to get reimbursed? A stenographer and all that stuff? Has any of that stuff been thought about, or have you just said, well, we're going to have this and that's it?
And indeed, the issue of administrative and legal support were all mentioned, and hopefully within the charge, in the response to the charge from the two co-chairs, that we will have information that we could perhaps develop an appropriate budget to support what they feel is necessary in order to accomplish their objective. Did
Yes.
you want to add something to that?
Marcia?
I was just going to say that you mentioned having an end-of-life discussion. Are you telling us that 'cause our life is ending? Is that what you're telling us based on this? No.
We're dying every day, Marcia.
I understand. Based on today's meeting, and, I was there, I still am not sure, maybe you haven't fully defined what their charge is, because, again, at one point, after the League of Women Voters read a statement which I know most of the people, again, don't have it, and our copier is broken. I will scan that in for everybody from the Assembly and forward it to them this evening. In it repeatedly talks about a charter commission, and at one point Sheila mentioned and said that she completely supported what they were saying. So again, I come out of there confused that you understand this. The speaker is the one who sets up a charter commission. I think the gentleman understood that too, and so I don't know. I never really got a feel of what exactly are they doing.
We moved so far from having a bloodless coup d'etat. I mean, we really have. The whole point of a first step is to have a discussion with people that we've asked to serve on the commission, and then to formulate a charge that would grow out of that discussion, which is being put together now. When that is done, I think we'd be in a better position to respond to what the League of Women Voters have suggested, what the Business Roundtable have suggested, and what we decide as county commissioners as to which would be useful. Mark has been charged with that responsibility right now.
If I may, to follow up on what Richard Anderson suggested, which is in terms of the process and the resources and the support, we recognize that that's very important, because I think the first priority is transparency. We want to make sure that pardon me, that the meetings are held in public, that people know about them. We think it's important that they be on the website, that the agenda be on the website, the minutes be on the website, and any documents that the Special Commission might be reviewing are also available on the website, so that people really become part of the process. Everybody, not just the Assembly, but citizens. We also realize that there may be a legal counsel required from time to time, and they must have some type of stenographic resources as well. So when the charge is put together, and I think, who was it, said a couple of weeks ago that this is sort of a blue sky approach? I mean, yes, if we are a regional government, we should look like a regional government and act like a regional government. And I think we mentioned this morning, we pretty much agreed by consensus that this does not take the place of a charter review at all. This is a blue sky look at county government as a regional entity, and how going forward to meet the needs of this, of Barnstable County now and in the future over the next 20 years, what should this government look like and what should it be? And that's really what it is. It's not focusing on structure. And Teresa made some very good points this morning. You don't start out with the structure and say, well, let's change the structure. We should have 5 commissioners or 7 commissioners or this or that. We focus on what it is, on our goals, what it is we want to accomplish over the long haul. And then look at where we are, what we are, who we are, and whether or not this structure lends itself to that. And if it doesn't, and if it should be changed, there is a good reason for it. And it's based on being able to accomplish goals, not on any other political or any other rationale at all. So I really look forward to this, because I think that when you look at the issues that face us, towns on their own cannot resolve these. The wind turbine issues, the transportation issues, the renewable energy of any kind, wastewater issues, those are not going to be resolved by each town. And somehow or other, we need to be able to look at a regional government that will somehow blur those lines between and among towns, not make them disappear, but blur them enough so that towns can work together on reaching solutions to these problems.
There is a literature that supports the idea that we can have a structure that basically reacts in response to what you have now, but might not be flexible enough to, let's say, to support changes that occur, which a government would be responsible for. I believe that Pat is suggesting, and I support, that we are looking at what functions we anticipate and what functions are useful for a government to have, and then we can have a form that basically follows the functional responsibility that we've identified. And hopefully, by having, as the Business Roundtable has suggested and the Legal and Voters, that we have an outside pair of eyes who have some familiarity with our past process, and Rob O'Leary especially, who was part of the original charter, can offer some wonderful insights as to where we were, and perhaps through observation, both his past participation and what he has seen with the distance that he's had now, some observations of where we need to go. You mentioned the Business Roundtable. I think one of the difficulties we're having is that when Commissioner Flynn suggests we're not looking at the structure, there seems to be some suggestion the Business Roundtable has already submitted, some kind of alternate structure, and that I haven't seen it, and no one else. I haven't talked to anybody who's seen it. So I mean, and since they're one of the primary motivators behind this, I mean, is there a document somewhere I can see that they've submitted? Or?
I can't say that I have seen that anything different than what has been submitted as far as their own statements and comments. They did submit a paper to us when they came before us with sort of an outline of their proposal. And
is that in the vault somewhere? Is that kept in the vault?
No, I can't. That could be readily available. If somebody has a copy of it, we'll scan it too and make sure everybody has a copy. However, I mean, regardless of what the Business Roundtable is seeing, and there are people who see a need for a review of county government, and we're this many years old, and we really have to look at the fact that we are an island with 15 towns that have their own their own powers and their own needs, and how can we assist those towns, and how can we complement those towns, and not duplicate efforts, and and alleviate the burdens that are coming with these huge issues. So, for me, we're looking at county government for the future generations. It's not something that's about anybody personally in this room or outside this room. I think it's a good time to take a look at where we are and what is it that we are about, and how is we as a people of a region going to address these big problems. And if there's a better way of doing things, let's find out what it is and maybe give it a try. If they may not find anything impeding progress from the structure, maybe it's internal setups, of how we interact with each other. So maybe that will be what the result is. But it was Henri Rauschenbach that basically did first say, first you have to look at what the function is. So, regardless of what these other groups are saying, you can see that now you're going to have two co-chairs that actually kind of get the idea, and they can tighten that framework.
Yeah, the only other question I have is, we have to, one of the things, if we're going to re-examine Barnstable County government or Cape Cod regional government, we have to decide what is Cape Cod regional government. We have a lot of different manifestations of that.
Exactly,
we have
right.
organizations created by ordinance, like the Wastewater Collaborative, which already have a board that's represented each town. We have sections of county government, or at least parallel sections of county government, which were created by acts of the legislature, Cape Light Compact, the commission, the CVEC, or whatever it is. So all of which are generally bundled into the public's perception of what Barnstable County does, but not necessarily under the same organizational structure.
Right.
Do you think they're going to take a broader look at this, or a narrower look?
Well, I did state that, in looking at this, they couldn't just look at the county as just the county, the original county. We have had these, quasi-governmental structures added on to us. How are our government, regulations and our guidelines in sync with how the functions of those needed and necessary departments are? So I think this is all good. Let's face it, there's times that we're all sitting here saying, which charter and who, and if somebody can help us pull all that together and we really are on the same page, working together, as opposed to, our town interests or against each other, it's only going to be a benefit.
Could I say one more
Sure.
thing? We also gave them a time frame of 6 to 8 months. This isn't something that's going to go on for a long time. It needs to get done and get wrapped up, and that the process is clear.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
I'd like to follow up on something that Delegate Anderson brought up, and using my own experience with the 21st Century Task Force. We had present in the room almost the entire Cape Cod Commission staff as a resource for those meetings, and I'm sure in between meetings they were participating in discussions. I was always very concerned that they were being taken away from something else that they should be doing, although because it was a commission I didn't mind so much. Now, I think for this process to play out well, you need either the county administrator or the assistant county administrator in the room. And now I'm really concerned that they're being taken away from something else. This would take hours out of their week. And I think some provision should be made to make sure that they don't get pulled away when we need them most.
No, I agree, and there was a lot of talk about the Assembly's role in this as well, from especially Senator O'Leary. And, I know that you had mentioned the staff was there sort of on the sidelines, not a voting member, but they were available for clarification, comment, information as different items came up. And I do think when these things, these meetings are established and on a date line, we should all be participating, even if it's part of the public, so that we can be available. I don't think that any of us are going to, it's a special independent commission, so I don't see it being independent if we're all there voting on it. So.
Anybody else?
Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
I, too, was at the meeting this afternoon, and I just wanted to say that one of the things I thought was important was, at least Senator O'Leary is very cognizant of the various political interests involved here. And one of the things that he was very clear about was that any process that doesn't involve this assembly and at least give the assembly a space at the table is not going to have credibility with this body, and he's very sensitive to that. He's also sensitive to the other kind of vested interests that are in the county, and I think his commitment today was to ensure that all of those interests are represented on this commission as it goes forward. And my understanding of what the process is going to be is that they're going to, Rajenbach and O'Leary are going to spend some time figuring out the who's in terms of what the constituent groups are and identifying who should be on this group before it actually starts meeting, and that any report it makes would not be available till 6 to 8 months after it actually starts meeting. So that's what I'm understanding from today's discussion is the timeline. Now, I don't know whether that will change, but that's what we heard today.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that? Tom?
A couple of weeks ago, before the land-based wind turbine regulation was sent to us, the commissioners seemed to have a discussion as to whether they had the right to send it back or whether it be sent on, and you took a week or two to examine what your proper procedure should be, and I was just wondering if you could share for us now what we could expect that procedure to be in the future, and what you learned from that break.
In my opinion, there continues to be a little difference with regard to this. However, Attorney Troy had told us that in the process of delivering the ordinance, that our part was not necessarily an approval, although I had some problems with that, but an administrative transfer. And I believe that that's the guidance that was suggested would be used in the future. However, I'll speak to that when we get to the hearing stage.
Can I just add to that? There was also discussion that the procedures in the Act, the Cape Cod Commission Act, and the Charter sort of speak the same up until when an ordinance is put forward. And this is not the first time this ordinance has been put forward to you. This process started in November. An ordinance was given to you, you made recommendations to it, you voted it down with recommendations. This is a response to you. So in many ways, this is an ongoing process. So Attorney Troy did speak to this. This is not really where we come in, because it's something that's already in place. It's sort of between you and the commission right now.
So are you saying that if you had, at the first time, when it was the looser regs, if you had turned then and said, gee, no, Commission, we think they should be more balanced, you could have sent it back then? Is that what you just said?
No, what he is saying is at that point in the process, that we are an administrative role as far as passing it through. Ours, as being the executive branch, it comes back to us at the end of that process, and if we have questions, concerns, we can tack those on there, whatever, if there's a veto. It's sort of like the way the budget works.
Yeah, I just got confused because you started saying it was an ongoing process from November, so I was saying if in November you had taken a different stand, but
the beginning is all the same.
Administrative transfer, whenever you get it, and so we can expect them whenever you finish that process.
Right, well, they were just submitted today, so they're all yours.
My concern, as well as the clerk's concern with this matter, is to see that all the provisions of the open meeting law and the provisions of public disclosure are met, and not to get into any legal issues which are not immediately germane to our process now that's started. In other words, so we're going to go within a timeline that's going to satisfy all the requirements of both the commission and on our responsibility, and we're going to go to, believe it or not, onto the substance of the issue rather than the procedure. So there it is. So. Anything else from the commissioners? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think my question would be directed to your chair, although any of the three of you. During some of the budget hearings I've attended recently, one of the department heads, we somehow got into a conversation about some reports that in the past had been generated from admin. I believe they were called town service reports, maybe. But in any case, they were together so that each delegate could go back to their town and say, you know, last year, here's what the county did that really directly involved your town. And we said, gee, can we get a copy for this year? And the answer we got back was that the production of those reports had stopped, maybe about 2 years ago, that maybe they were asked for in a specific year and it wasn't a continuing issue. So we all looked at each other, and I'm so glad I remembered because I almost forgot. We wanted to bring it back to you, and if you agree you'd like those reports to be produced again, I hope you vote to direct your staff to do that, and then we can go through that process.
Cheryl, as you know, I've always thought that was a good idea. Communication is very important. Diane was the one that would generate the report that would be town-specific. And, you know, we're in a transition stage, you know, right now. And let's see, when did your town report due? Because they're due at different times.
Oh, they're due in January. Right.
Okay, so that's gone by.
I didn't
I
understand
think
that
that we-
report came from the Assembly. I thought it was,
It's from the Assembly.
how could it be? It's a staff report from the county.
It was always given a,
Well, always and never, but yes, John?
well,
No.
Sorry.
Well, are we talking, before we get, are we getting, each year, I submit a report to Chatham detailing the ongoing procedures of the Assembly of Delegates in Barnstable County. So, and that's not what you're referring to. Okay. Julia, you have some wisdom to add to this?
Well, I'm just remembering when the commissioners and either Mark or Maggie and a delegate showed up at the town hall at night and with a report that was targeted about, I don't think those were what Diane wrote.
No,
Those were-
those particular ones were the part of the dog and pony that we used to do
Yes.
on a regular basis, and I believe that they stopped
Every 2 years.
2 years ago.
Right. Now that, you know, I thought they were politically excellent, and they were useful. But they were not the same as what Diane produced, which was just a general county report for us to send in to our town report if we wanted. So I think that what Cheryl would like is whether that could reappear.
If that is the question, then my direct answer is yes. Starting in August, we will start scheduling those visits to all of the, to all of the towns and give that report.
That's what you
And also, I
want.
think she's looking for the report. You would like that report in hand
Well,
yourself.
again, I received information during a budget hearing, and maybe I misunderstood.
Well, let me go review the
They
process.
referred to it as a town services report. It was a document that was, and
It's how
since
much
it-
money was spent in Provincetown.
last year.
Yeah.
Well, not just money, just the programs.
And the programs.
Yeah, it's not,
Okay.
and so that would be for last year. We would have to wait till August to get that report?
Well, the problem had been that when we were scheduling them to do in the spring, it was interfering with town meetings and let's say, and the activities that the boards of selectmen had in doing their own work. So we scheduled it at a time when they would be available to, and not be under let's say, the time pressure that's involved with preparing for town meeting. That's why the change was made. I can tell you that when we started doing that, because they started doing it when I was chair the last time, we assembled the activities within a particular community. We quantified the number of programs, and we submitted that ahead of time to both the delegate and to the Board of Selectmen, and gave essentially a summary report when we came before them. And in that particular one, we had the benefit of being taped in the town, and we had and we were hoping that would be a vehicle to get more visibility for both county government as well as the local representative in the work on county government.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave you with this thought. If the commissioners go forward with this, I'm going to hope, or at least ask for, that all 15 of those reports get put together, consolidated, so that we can all see the report? Super, thank you.
Okay, yeah, I just to add to this, rather than go back in history and decide what procedures went on 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it would be better if we would establish a standard procedure that perhaps require some information from the administrator on a yearly basis that we could incorporate with our personal communications to the various towns. For instance, the Chatham Town report of every year, rather than have things sent all over this. So whatever is convenient and useful to both the commissioners and the administration and the delegates, I'm sure we can get together on something like that.
Okay. At this moment, there is something called an annual report, which,
Yes.
should be available to you.
Yeah, that, we get the annual report, Bill. Tony, did you have something to say?
I do, Mr. Speaker. I guess I'm just a little confused. I'm going back 2 issues ago. The ordinance that we're going to be discussing on the 20th, and that the government regs are going to be discussing on the 13th, if that's an ongoing process, what is the process when it comes to us? If we decide we'd like to make changes to those regs, do we just, once again, send them back to the commissioners?
Well, excuse me.
I'm sorry, to the Cape Cod Commission.
The regulation amendment that you have in front of you, now you have the ability to vote it up or down. If you suggest an amendment, it comes with the rejection of the amendment, or the total amendment that's there. The suggestions that are made with regard to change is not something that can be amended here. It has to go back to the Cape Cod Commission to be amended. The comment of an ongoing process, I believe, is misleading, because when it is changed, it is a new regulation. You had voted down a different regulation before. You now have a new regulation in front of you. And the timeline that you have to accommodate that regulation is based upon what your speaker had just said. You have 60 days in which to evaluate that and have your hearings and let's say, and make your judgment as to whether or not it goes forward. What Bob Troy told us was anybody can offer an amendment to the regional policy plan or DRI. The public, by initiative petition, can do it. I think they need 100 signatures. Members of the Assembly can offer an amendment to the regional policy plan if they choose to do it. And I believe at the conclusion of the discussion that we had, or you had, at the submission of the previous addressing of this issue, I believe you decided that you were going to wait and see what the Cape Cod Commission would respond to based upon the general conversation that was held here, rather than submitting your own amendment. Now, the process so far has remained the same, but your opportunity to make those suggestions that would then have to be taken up by the Cape Cod Commission to see whether or not they would incorporate it in a changed amendment. If you vote it down, then that's where you are right now.
So the ordinance...
Go ahead, Tony.
So the ordinance that is before us is a different ordinance than was sent back last November.
It certainly is.
Okay, well, I wasn't here, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But if on the 20th, when we're discussing this new ordinance, we would like to see changes made, we have to completely vote down ordinance, 11.1 or 11.4? 11.3 and 4. We have to turn them down here, no, and then start the process over again.
Okay.
Is that right?
If I can, you didn't just make suggestions. You rejected that ordinance with what you felt the changes should be in a letter to the Cape Cod Commission. The Cape Cod Commission took those changes and incorporated them into the amendment, and now they're sending them back to you to see if they satisfy what the letter said, for what you asked for. So basically, they're in direct response to your request of change. So that is what, that's the ongoing dialogue. It might have a different number because there were changes made in it, but it is a response to your original letter of changes.
We're just going to add more of the confusion. I don't know if this
But that
is
is,
an ongoing problem.
if you read Section 6 and Section 12 of the Cape Cod Commission Act, it really just lays this out very clearly that this is the process that you're in the middle of right now.
Julia.
Tony, I think the only problem might arise from Bill's use of the word amendment to but the whole proposal is an amendment to the regional policy plan. When it comes to us, we can either vote that change up or down, but we can't amend it at the time. And so it will be our judgment when it comes now with the new version, whether that is in response to our criticisms, and we'll see whether we like it or not, and we'll vote it up or down. And if we wanted something different, we could express that again. But the word amendment, yes, anything like this is an amendment to the regional policy plan, but we are not in the amendment business.
Mr. Speaker,
Yeah, Tony.
one more, if I might make a request. I was not here when the original ordinance that the Assembly decided to send back with suggestions was proposed and then thus sent back. Is there any way I could see the original ordinance as well as the changes that were requested by the Assembly?
We'll see if we can get that for you, but I think you're going to find that it's not going to give you a total picture. In other words, they weren't that specific about the, and I'm speaking out of turn here, maybe it's better if you saw it yourself, but the original discussion was whether or not a wind turbine would be included in a DRI that would go to the commission regardless of whether it had a wind turbine in it or not. In other words, it would go to the commission under existing regulations. Let's say it was over a certain square foot or over a certain number of acreage and it had a wind turbine in it. So they would say, we don't have any regulations to judge that wind turbine. We sent it back with the suggestion that wind turbines themselves should trigger a DRI under certain circumstances. So the argument as to whether it is a new ordinance or whether it is simply sending us back the old ordinance, I mean, we could go around and around on that, and it's a matter of opinion.
But I think this is a very important point. And Tony, he's talking about whether whether we liked the standards or whether we wanted a threshold. The other one had no threshold to. But it's very nicely spelled out, the criticisms and the Assembly meeting in the minutes of that meeting. And I do strongly urge, since you weren't here, and then we have 4 new members, some of whom were here, that's true, some were here, but you really should, you really should review that hearing, and because it makes it pretty clear what the thinking was at that time. And now we have a very different ordinance submitted, and you could compare the 2 ordinances. But one big change is that there are now thresholds that would trigger review for any wind turbine over 65 feet, whereas in the other, there was no threshold, and it didn't trigger it unless it was part of another project that had a trigger.
So I guess what I need then is the original ordinance that did have no thresholds, because all this draft that I thought I saw were thresholds.
No, it's standards of what the rules would be if a threshold were triggered, and the trigger is 65 feet.
That's the threshold now.
And there was no threshold before. Nothing triggered it unless it was part of another project. So you need to see it, and you need to get the minutes, and you'll remember what the minutes were, because that was part of, so you could find those pretty easily.
Easy for you to say.
And send them out to the people who weren't here.
November 17th.
Yeah.
If I can state, I know that a couple of meetings ago, the executive director came here and asked if there could be a full presentation to the full assembly. And given the assumptions that are made on all of these things even before people read them, and then people form opinions, I think it's a very good opportunity for you to have that staff, not just with the government regs, but to be able to clarify any of these questions, what triggers, a lot of people say anything over 65 feet won't be built, so everything will never be built. That just triggers a review. And in hindsight, I think that, one more review for public interest isn't always a bad thing. It doesn't mean that the project isn't going to go through. I mean, I've sat on the commission for 2 years, and it's a very worthwhile experience for anyone, because you do learn a lot more about how these things are dealt with. They're not as draconian or set in stone. Those are all, everything is managed through technical bulletins, and each project is a little bit different, so it's looked at under certain standards. But it doesn't mean that this is, I know that there's all this talk that this is anti-wind. I mean, I have no feeling about it one way or the other, but...
I just want to suggest, and I'll recognize Tom in a bit, I want to suggest that if, we're going to hold a public hearing before government regs a week from today, and that'll be the major opportunity for the commission to explain the reasoning behind the regulations. I mean, we'll have an opportunity to do that at the meeting on the 20th, but generally it's the public hearing when the commission gives its presentation. So if any of the delegates who are not on the government regs committee have any questions or concerns, they should contact me or a member of the commission so that the commission will have an idea when they come in exactly what the questions are, what the issues are. And so I think we'll have a much better process. We may suspend the rules during the meeting on the 20th to allow them to answer questions, but I think we should try to, I'd love to have as many of you here as can make it on the 6th, and certainly I'll take testimony from the delegates, but you got to realize it's a public hearing, and and there's going to be a lot of people here, so we want to give them the chance to make their case. Just a minute, Tom, and then Tony.
I'm a little concerned about the idea that we sent a letter that gave suggestions to the Cape Cod Commission, and they regurgitated those in the amendment, and that's what's there. I don't recall seeing that letter. There were suggestions made, multiple suggestions around what could be, but had we sent a letter, I would have wanted, as one delegate, to have been able to say, I would have liked a municipal exemption. I would have liked this threshold of 250 feet, not 65 feet. I would have liked, a different sort of standard for sounds. I would have liked to have, to see the technical bulletins when you come back. There might have been 4 or 5 things that I would have liked to have asked them to do. I'd like to see the letter that we sent that apparently gave direction to them.
I don't know that there's any letter sent.
Mr. Speaker, I just
There was no letter
glanced at the attorney from the commission, and she said there wasn't a letter. It was basically the dialogue and the conversation that took place of the recommendations that needed to happen.
At the end of the meeting, the director
That's
of
the
the
record.
commissioner was here, and I said, do you have, from the testimony you've heard today, and I'm sure this will be reflected in the minutes and also on the tape, do you have the direction you think you can come back to the assembly with some regulations and he said, yes, basically, I've heard this, and we'll come up with some. So,
Right.
no, there was no formal...
I'm sorry, I was referring to the way it was structured in the act. I thought there was a letter, so I stand corrected on that, but they were going by the minutes of that meeting.
Tony?
Yeah, I'm sorry to drag this out, but I have a concern, and I'm going to bring it up only because it does affect me. We're having the public hearing on an off Wednesday that we are not scheduled to have a meeting. Now, I don't know if anybody else is going to be unable to attend that meeting, and as you said, I think it's important that all the delegates be here for that public hearing. I'd like to see the schedule changed a little bit to have the public hearing on our next Wednesday which is April 20th, and then move the meeting that you guys have scheduled for the 20th to vote on these things to the first Wednesday in May, so that we can in fact ensure that everybody will be able to be here on the public hearing. Because I know I'm already pretty sure I'm not going to be able to make it because I work. So I'd like to see that change if we could do that.
Mr. Speaker?
Yep. Spiro?
I'll defer if you'd prefer to answer Tony's question, but I'd like to remind the chair that we are in communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners. This conversation probably belongs in the Assembly when it convenes.
I agree, totally.
Sorry.
I had this discussion with the clerk as to what could come up during the meeting, and I said, communications from the commissioners are sort of an open-ended thing, and
Yeah.
it depends on how much else or business we have to deal with during the day as to whether it's appropriate.
Yeah. So we're going to move.
But I have to say that the public hearing, for various reasons having to do with the timeframes under which ordinances be considered, and also the ongoing budget process, I've scheduled the public hearing. It's been posted for Wednesday. So as much as I regret that not everyone can be here, Janice did contact the members of the Government Regs Committee, and we're going to have a quorum, if not a complete committee meeting. So we'll go from there.
Could I make...
Could, but we're not
okay.
going to.
May I make
That's what I'm telling you.
May I make a suggestion to pick up on something Teresa had suggested
Yes.
today, that the possibility of using technology, and perhaps you could listen to it through some type of conference call arrangement, so you could at least, that, you could at least, if not direct participation, at least be aware of what was going on at that time. So I think that might be something that, that you might look as an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's time to thank the commissioners for their input, and we'll go on with the rest of the business of the Assembly. Do we have any communications from public officials? Oh, by the way, I should mention that this meeting is being recorded both by our staff and also by others. I don't know where I forgot that. Any communications from members of the public? Okay. Hearing none, the Assembly... Oh, wait a minute, sorry. There you go. You got to be quick.
I'm Jerry Rutherford, and I'm here on another...
Would you sit down and use the microphone, please?
I'm Jerry Rutherford, and I'm here to call to your attention a conference coming... Oh, people turn it off, I'm sorry. A conference being held on April 16th. Water justice, our well-being, our rights, our responsibilities. A regional conference for residents of southeastern Massachusetts. It's about clean water, and it has several tracks. One is how personally you can respond to these challenges to health and water, and the other is what the community can do. And it's being sponsored by the Cape and Islands Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Cluster, Cape and the Islands Group Sierra Club, Green Cape, and the Service Committee. But it's going to be at the Barnstable Church just up the street, an all-day conference. $15 includes lunch and coffee in the morning, and so I wanted to make sure you heard about it and could come if you were able to. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other communications from members of the public? George, do you have something for us?
Thank you. My name is George Bryant from Provincetown. I attended the Barnstable County Health and Human Services Advisory Council a couple of weeks ago, and I'd like to sketch the things that came up. At first, a video was presented, a rather long one actually, about an immigrant family, starting with the father from Mexico, which was rather fascinating. And then eventually the rest of the family came. The father worked in a $6.50 an hour job, and eventually his wife worked when she came here. They had 2 children, and one of the conclusions was that there was no real progress in the income over a period of years after both parents came. And secondly, their health wasn't as good later as it was when they first arrived. And this was, of course, a caution to governmental bodies that these problems do exist. At the end of the discussion, I brought up the information that was brought to the Assembly a couple of years ago about the Brazilians. There was some discussion about that. It's found that the Brazilian adults in this area have a higher degree of depression than any other identifiable group. The children do not. Some of you who were here then probably remember that. Of course, the kids are going to accommodate themselves to the conditions here. The parents may not. I mean, they're leaving a country where the sun shines a great deal of the time, and where they live in a compatible community. And once they get here, it is, I guess, depression is a big factor. I don't know what the new study will tell us, but it's something to be concerned about. A woman named Lee Witherspoon, who was involved in this, and also Jackie Fields, who we all know from the human rights group that was formed several years ago. Secondly, the county health rankings came up, and you should have received information from that. We're kind of in the middle out of the 14 counties in terms of the condition of the people, but we're near the top in services and facilities, and we know that. We've been working on it very hard. So hopefully there's an improvement coming along. There was a no discussion of the mental health summit that I brought up the last time I came here. I guess it's still being worked on, and it sounds like a very important decision for the county to make after the information is provided. The next meeting will be on April the 24th. That's a Thursday, and I intend to get there. I'm doing this, of course, on my own because I'm interested in it, and always have been. I attended the Provincetown town meeting last night, and they passed their human services allocation. It came to $49,000, which is a paltry amount of money. And of course, most of the organizations that will be getting this are local organizations, and they're the same people who got it last year, maybe with a little more or a little less. And that's the pattern that presents itself in almost any agency. Well, you know, when the budgets come up, everybody gets surprised if they're asking for 5% more, whether they need it or not. A study that was done that was presented to the Assembly a few years ago showed that Wellfleet had the highest per capita expense for human services. Some, of course, provide almost nothing or nothing, towns, and Provincetown is certainly not very high on the list. So if the delegates want something to do every winter, they should get together with their towns and promote human service expenses, because it means that the county usually means that the county would have to come up with less. It used to be a rule back in the 60s and the early 70s that if the county gave money to a particular organization, the town didn't, and vice versa. Now, everything's become far more complicated. It's not 3 or 4 organizations anymore that want money from the town, but it's many of them, and some of them you look at them and you're not really aware of what they are or what they do. But I think the delegates could be very helpful in this respect, because the needs are certainly going to increase as the awareness of problems increases, and we're not going to escape that at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'd like to thank George for attending those meetings. You know, one of the purposes of the the Service Advisory Council is to advise the county government on the human service needs. And when I set up the committees at the beginning of this session, I really, because of other commitments that people had, I had a hard time finding someone to take the human service chair. Chris Kanagas agreed to do it, and I've tried to make those meetings, but for some reason, coincidentally, I haven't been able to make them. But I really urge any of the delegates that are available during this time to go to the meetings. Not only are they informational and give you an idea of what's going on, but they serve to connect us, the Assembly of Delegates and the county government, to the Human Service Advisory Council and maintain that connection that's been going on for many years. So
only about 20 people attended because of, I suspect, the very wet snow that occurred early that morning and the night before. But usually there are 30 people there. It's quite impressive. Having served on municipal boards for 40 years, I can tell if you have an attendance of 30 people, it's something to write home about.
It is. That's a crowd.
And they should be firmly supported.
All right. Thank you, George.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other members of the public wish to speak? Hearing none, the Assembly will now convene, and we will begin with reports of committees. Probably have quite a few. Would anybody want to start it off? Or? Okay, Julia?
The Natural Resources Committee met today. Of course, I wasn't here for most of the meeting because I was on jury duty, but I got in for the end. And then, of course, if this was on the wastewater collaborative, and Andrew wasn't here either because he had to go to a funeral. However, the members had good questions, and Patty Daly was there, and Jessica was there. And the only thing of controversy was the issue of the $100,000 proposed to be spent on a sort of a blue ribbon review of Brian House's science behind the, so since there's been criticism from some people of these unknown method or the proprietary method that he's used to analyze it, does that make the data questionable or not? And this is we talked about this before, whether the county could offer to be an honest broker of information. And so they are proposing this $100,000. Cheryl was a little worried, as was Teresa, that if you didn't have political buy-in from the people who already didn't like the project, would this solve that problem? So she wants to look a little further into what was the wastewater collaborative's point of view and how avidly had they supported this request. So we'll find out more about that and come forward. But it did, 3 members in the end did vote in favor of passing that along, that budget item, with 1 abstention.
Okay. You realize, Julia, the last time that the county went into a controversy like this and offered to lend a hand was during the NSTAR spraying, and as usual, no good deed goes unpunished, so I hope that history doesn't repeat itself. And
at any rate, we'll see. We'll know more soon.
Okay. Paul?
Microphone, please. Microphone, please.
The Economic Affairs Committee met last week. We were pleased to have the opportunity to review with the Cape Cod Commission some of their economic development activities, which we approved unanimously. And we also met with a representative of the Arts Foundation and also approved the allocation to be forwarded to the Finance Committee and the Assembly for the Arts Foundation. But as a minimum, and we would, if there were money that were left over, we would love to see that allocation increased because we think that's an important resource for economic development. Also, Chris Kaniga's not here.
Right, you can do the Human Services.
The Human Services Committee met. We had a number of interesting presentations, including a major increase in funding for the Cape Cod Commission programs. The committee, I think, felt that they needed more time to contemplate those, and so we scheduled another meeting, April 20th, is that right? To actually take votes on the various budget items.
Did you say the commission, Children's Cove was an issue?
Committee.
What's that?
I'm sorry. The county Human Service Department, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a major budget increase there that's partially for programs that have been funded by grants that now we're being asked to fund, and partially for some brand new programs. And there was, I think, some questions about that and some, feeling that we wanted to take another couple of weeks to deliberate.
Okay, thank you. Now, Finance, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met at 2 o'clock today to discuss several different branches of county government. We started with the Resource Development Office. They came in with a very good budget. They presented us their grant program and was well received by the Finance Committee, and we voted 3-0 to bring it forward favorably to the Assembly. I do want to mention that fact that Darlene Johnson, that is the head of the RDO, is also the head of AmeriCorps, and she alerted us once again for the public at large and for the Assembly. If you care about the AmeriCorps program and what it does for your community, it's at the head of the list to be cut entirely by the new federal government budget cuts. And if you care to talk to your congressman or your U.S. senators, that would be greatly appreciated. It's a critical mass issue right now with them. There may be no AmeriCorps countrywide. Then we moved on to the commissioners and finance and shared costs. Maggie Downey and Mark Zielinski presented their budgets. I think we thought that everything was in line there. We had no major disagreements with it, and once again, on all three of those sub-programs, we voted 3-0 to forward it favorably to the Assembly, full Assembly. Then we also went to IT. There was probably more dissension about IT, only because it has dramatic increases in both capital and programmatic and personnel. But after listening to John Morris and his right-hand man, Peter, we eventually voted 3-0 to forward it favorably to the committee. I would urge you to look at it yourselves and see if you agree, because it was very substantial increases. Last, we went to the Assembly of Delegates, and to my knowledge, we're the only ones who actually went down in budget requests this year on a financial basis, and that passed 3-0. We're also going to have, as you know on your list, we're going to, on the 27th of April, we're going to have a general discussion. The Finance Committee is going to have a general discussion with the department heads, not the department heads, the heads of all of the subcommittees here in the Assembly. I would urge everybody, if they have any time and any energy, to come over and lend it, because this budget has a 7.2% increase when other towns are hurting. And I think that we have to get together and decide a lot of issues, and I would really prefer it if it were a general discussion of the body, and that will be on the 27th. So it will be between the heads of the subcommittees, but I would really urge that every member of the Assembly attend, and I would encourage your participation and your thoughtfulness. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for committee hearings. Report from the clerk.
The easy part of the meeting. There are a few things that I wanted to report to you this afternoon. I want to let you know that I have started to put the notices of the agenda for the various standing committee meetings on the web. So if you go to the page for committee meetings, you'll be able to tab on the various committees that are scheduled to meet once I'm scheduled to put that notice out. So right now, on there are the two meetings that happened today, and tomorrow I'll put the meetings that are scheduled for next week on. So that's a beginning. Also, I wanted to report to you that we received the census figures, the update from the 2010 census, and as of today, the percentages have changed. Most went down, a few went up. If you would like to know what those are, I'm more than happy to share that with you. I don't know if you want to take the time this evening to do that. I can give you what they are now, what they were, what they are, whatever you'd like.
Maybe you better just email them to everyone.
Okay.
When do they go into effect?
Today.
Awesome.
Today. At this vote today.
I'm the biggest up.
Point of order? Do we have a definitive answer to when they take effect? I mean, we know what they are certified by, but as with most other elected offices, those population figures don't take effect until the next election.
My understanding is they take effect when we're notified by the Secretary of the Commonwealth. officially notified by the Secretary of Commonwealth. Now, I might be wrong on that, I'm not a lawyer, but the census taken is a national census. They report to the states, and then the states essentially notify the individual towns. So we've known what they are for months. We just have to wait till they coughed them up in an official notification of the number.
No, I understand your point. My point being that we were elected at a time when our populations were not certified to be different than as they are now, that we were elected to serve here under those numbers, and we should continue to serve with those numbers until the next election. I will defer to somebody who has a legal authority to tell me otherwise, or I'm going to have to go find it myself. But
Cheryl, hopefully you have a definitive answer, and this isn't going to go on.
And I'm charging by the hour as I think about it. I certainly speak not from any self-interested place. 1.5 or 1.3 is not going to keep me awake at night. To the extent that I thought about it, because I knew it was about to happen, I have to say I think there's some merit to the argument made by the delegate from Yarmouth. It would be, in my estimation, just reading the paper every day and thinking about these things, it would be, if the ruling from the Speaker were to stand, it would be equivalent to one of our congressmen disappearing today. And we all know that's not going to happen. We have too many congressmen from Massachusetts. And when that changes is going to be the next election. So there's a certain amount of consistency between other representational forms of government and what the Speaker says. And I raise that only because I know one personal goal of mine will be to see more consistency from the way the county behaves and other forms of government. And I've said that before. Thank you.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
Since the last time this happened in 2000, and again, I was the biggest bump, and I know I'm the biggest bump again, so I know this. Can you just check what we did 10 years ago? Because I think we did change it. And if that's what happened, you say one consistency, I think whatever we did 10 years ago, which I believe was once we got notified they changed, we should do that.
Yeah, but you can't be,
The only reference
you just can't be consistently wrong.
The only reference I could locate was the fact that on the documents that I had the chance to look at, it referenced that the change was made as a result of the 2000 census, and it was done at that time when that information was received. It may not be very definitive, but that's what I could find.
Just to add to the confusion for a minute, we have a weighted vote on this assembly because we're mandated to do that. It's not our idea. We can't change it. We're told that has to be the procedure, that we're mandated to have a weighted vote, and that weighted vote is determined by the population of the towns of Barnstable County. Now, you can argue as to whether we have to do it right away or later on, but my feeling is that that's going to be dictated by state and federal law, and it's not anything that we're going to decide here in this body. All right, so we can decide whatever we want, but it isn't going to make any difference because the mandate to have the weighted vote is something that's imposed on us, and the schedule for that weighted vote, whether it'll take some place today or it takes place next election, is also something that's mandated on us. So we can research it, but we can't change it. That's my personal opinion. All right. Anyway, having said that.
Can I move on?
Yes, move on.
I've revised and updated the budget review schedule. It was mentioned this evening that there's a committee meeting, I think it's Human Services, on the 20th. That's in addition to the schedule that you have, so that represents a change. In addition to that, I think Finance is meeting at 1:30 for the public hearing on the budget, which is May 4th. I think on your schedule, it indicates 1:30 or 2, and it's going to be 1:30. And I also provided you all with a copy of the fiscal year, June 30, 2010 audit. And if you do not want to retain that after you've looked at it, I don't mind taking them back. I only have a paper copy, and I'd like a hardbound copy for the file. I had only received 15. I also put on in your packets an invitation to the Smarter Cape Summit. It was brought up at one of the committee meetings that all of the Assembly delegates are invited to attend that. It's on May 9th and 10th at Wauquasit Resort in Harwich. What I'm not sure about is the cost to attend. I think it's free, provided that you go to the daytime events, but there isn't a breakfast on Tuesday and a dinner on Monday night, and I'm not sure if the invitation pays for it. So I'm in the process of trying to find that out for you in case it's something that you're interested in attending. Reminder that the Standing Committee on Public Services will be meeting on the 13th at 1 o'clock. And as you know, we are going to have...
Government regs?
I'm sorry.
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock for public services, and government regulations will be meeting at 4 for the public hearing on the wind regulations, hopefully at 4 o'clock. We are making progress on the charter review, the charter clarification, making progress on that. And I do have 2 annual reports that were not picked up by, I don't know which delegate last week. Last call, if you'd like it. If not, it's just going to be in the office on the shelf. If you didn't receive it, it's here. You also received a Fire and Rescue Training Academy mid-year report. I put that in your packet. And I also gave you all today a handout from the Resource Development Office. I was asked by the committee to disseminate that to all the delegates. And question, seating arrangements. It would be very helpful for me if, before the meetings, I was able to put your tags out, put your materials at the desk, position the mics. I didn't know if the seating arrangement, as it appears now, is the way in which the delegates like to be seated. Are there some that choose different seats? I don't know what your pleasure is, but it would be helpful.
I'd like to speak to that.
Yeah.
And on behalf of the rest of the peanut gallery down here, those of us with the 0%, 0 point whatever apportioned interests, I'd like to move that we move the amplification equipment so that everybody can move down, so that everybody can be seen. This post right here means that I and this person right here can't see who's sitting there speaking. Now, I understand that, it can be argued that, Truro and my absent partner here can't affect the outcome of anything, but, we might as well have the appearance of a right to participate, so.
Deborah, I did investigate that. Actually, I spoke with the videographer, and I spoke with facilities, and I spoke to IT, and this isn't something that either of those departments can handle. So I was given the name of an individual that I can contact to get a quote for cost to relocate that. It's just in looking at the budget figures coming up on June 30, I didn't think it was something that we could afford to do now. Maybe in the next budget, given sometimes things happen that you don't expect and other things don't that you think we're going to, maybe we will be able to do that, but
I could probably take care of it with a chainsaw and a screwdriver, but, I think it's a matter of some amusement. Yes, that's true. However, I'm surprised it hasn't been addressed before now, because I think that what ends up happening is that there is exclusion from public participation that happens to this end of the table, and I'm objecting to it. And I'll laugh about it and smile, but I object to it, so.
No, I understand your comment, because before I was elected speaker, I sat exactly where you're sitting, right behind that pole. And you're right, it can be annoying. The only remedy, I mean,
Run for speaker.
Yeah, well, you can run for speaker, but there's also the fact that I can see you, and I can recognize you when you raise your hand, whereas I can't see Spiro over there because
that's okay. I have a tendency to interrupt when I want to be recognized.
So there are advantages and disadvantages. I would like to see more of a horseshoe thing. If we could get those seats and bring them out to where that dais is there, where that corner is, maybe we could do that. But that's something beyond. I'd have to get a couple guys with Yeah, chainsaws and screwdrivers, but I'll look into it. I know Janice has looked into it, and we'll do whatever we can, so, because I understand, I feel your pain, as the previous speaker once said. Okay.
You'll hear about it again.
I know, I will.
I don't like it either.
Thank
Okay.
you.
That concludes my report.
Oh, wait a minute, I have one more thing. There has been, the delegate from Wellfleet has submitted a resolution. You should have received a copy of it. It has to do with changes of the position of alternates and the standing of alternates and their ability to vote on an issue when regular members are absent. And I will schedule this for the full committee to discuss at a subsequent hearing when we can squeeze it in. Okay?
That's fine. Most of those who, the other delegates who were interested in this have now departed. So
Well,
are not here.
We'll find alternates, and they
So,
can...
Exactly,
okay.
yeah, but we would like to have that considered, and I have a copy of the present regulation if anybody would like to see that.
Okay. Is there any other business to be brought for the Assembly? John?
Very briefly, I want to let everybody in the home audience and here know that it's National Autism Month, and you wouldn't have to go very far from your neighborhood or your coworkers to find a family with somebody with autism, and you should think of them kindly this month especially. I happen to have 2 young men with autism that I'm the father of, and I hope that you consider them this month and think about a solution to the awful situation that has presented to our society. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Mr. Speaker? Following up on John's invitation to invite all the delegates to the April 27th Finance Committee meetings, I would like to request that we try not to schedule standalone meetings on off weeks, non-delegate meeting weeks, in the middle of the day. It would seem to me just difficult for most of the delegates to get there at 2 o'clock, but it really does preclude the public from participating in a public meeting as well. I'm not sure what the thought was behind scheduling it for 2 o'clock, but for the time being, it's published at 2 o'clock.
Okay. I'll take that. Yeah. Cheryl?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, moving right along, on the issue of scheduling, this afternoon we ended up with 2 committees that were scheduled to meet at the same time. I happen to serve on both, so I had to get up in the middle of one meeting and leave to go to another. Now, I'm assuming that maybe was an accident, but I would have liked to have attended the committees, both committees that I'm a member of, so I hope that was just an accident.
Well,
we won't.
Without getting into this sort of other business, without getting into it, the commissioners submitted the budget a month after I think they should have submitted the budget because of some confusion as to the previous ordinance which was passed allowing them a 1-year reprieve. All right, and every year at this time we run into the same problems in that we're under the time frame. Should something happen, should there be a disagreement, let's say over the 7% increase that John referred to, then it would go to a resolution, whatever you call it, process where we have to go back and forth with them. So it's really the time frames that dictate this. Can improvements be made? I agree improvements can be made. Sometimes, as Paul mentioned with Human Services, if you can't come to an agreement, you need more time, so you have to reschedule the meeting. That bumps up against other time frames. So during this period in late March and early April, really, we run into this problem, and it really is, I think that the resolution passed 2 years ago which designated alternate members helped a lot, because before that we wouldn't have a quorum sometimes, and that would mean, and I think that I'll try, and I'm sure the clerk will try to schedule these meetings convenient to everybody. The time frame, whether it should be 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock, I've gone through this with every organization I belong to, and people say I'm not going to show up at 6 because I eat dinner, and and then we get staff come in, and the staff says, hey, I work till 4, you're going to call me in late, so it's staff time. So there are issues on both sides, and whatever the will of the delegates are, and every year, every 2 years we have more people, they have different schedules. I'm self-employed, so I have more flexibility, some people aren't. So it's going to be a learning process, and it's going to have to be a process of negotiation as to when we can do these things. That's all I can say. Tony?
Mr. Speaker, when will we get a copy of the regs? When will we get a copy of the WIN regs that were presented to the Assembly today?
Well, I know that they're available online. I think I gave you a way to get to them, and admittedly, they are the Cape Cod Commission's link. That's what they presented to the Board of County Commissioners.
Well, they didn't
And
give you a group of...
They did give this piece to me. I don't have it electronically yet. I have an electronic version that was sent to me by the Cape Cod Commission.
Yeah, but that's the same as we're getting.
But it's the same.
So you don't have any hard copies of that? They didn't hand you hard copies today?
They gave me one master copy. This is it.
Can we just ask the commission to give us an electronic copy and then just email it to everybody?
Just the thresholds, the 2 or 3 pages, we don't have that?
I have what they handed me.
Well, it's the entire document. Didn't I email? I thought
Yeah, I got
had emailed.
that was 165 pages, right. What I'm looking for is the 2 or 3 pages of just the wind turbine threshold regulations.
Okay,
You don't have those.
if you stick around after the meeting, I'll look and see if I can.
No, that's
locate
okay.
that for you.
I'm not going to keep you here anymore,
No,
but
it's all right.
do you know if they've changed from the last draft that we got? Does anybody know that?
Yes.
Yeah, we have this.
No, I mean the last draft that we received here.
From November?
That's a totally different.
Okay, well then, if you could get me the minutes from the meeting that Julia was talking about, I'd appreciate that, and I'll try to try to navigate the Cape Cod.
I know everyone's getting ready to put their coats on, so I went back and forth whether I should say anything, but I just feel compelled. The previous delegate from Provincetown said, I think we were at rock bottom for the amount of money our town spends on human services, and I feel compelled as the new delegate to just state what many of us know already, that is, there's a lot of ways human service needs and agencies get their funding needs met and their regulatory needs met. And I started a list of what Provincetown's people are doing in this area, and it's astounding. Between the AIDS Support Group of Cape Cod, which actually was founded in Provincetown as the Provincetown AIDS Support Group, the affordable housing initiatives we've done, the Soup Kitchen of Provincetown, helping our women. I bet you we have the highest number of nonprofit social service agencies per capita compared to any other town on the Cape, and the townspeople of Provincetown are incredibly generous in the human services area. And it's one of the reasons why the town, the municipal budget, doesn't get pressed for an awful lot, is because so much goes on outside the town budget. And I just wanted to mention that because I'm so proud of what my town does for not only the residents but the visitors. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else,
Motion to adjourn.
okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're out of here.